Welcome to Women of a Certain Stage, the podcast redefining how we think about menopause. I'm your host, Lauren Chiren, a passionate advocate for breaking the stigma and empowering individuals to navigate this transformational stage of life with confidence and clarity. Here, we're diving into a new era of menopause support, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and actionable insights. Whether you're curious about building your personal menopause plan or you're looking to make an impact, you're in the right place. Let's embrace the change together. Okay, well, look, I've been really excited and looking forward to this conversation because I know how massive a thing it is for women when they're having babies or when they're pregnant. And then again, definitely when we get to menopause, sleep becomes, well, just goes out the window really for so many people. In fact, some surveys are showing that over 81% of women struggle with sleep during menopause. But I'm curious, how did you begin to get interested in this as a topic?
Good question. So I came in through actually circadian rhythm, so chronobiology, so that's sort of the time system. That's how I came in through animals, looking at seasonality in animals. And then from there, I noticed how lack of sleep or different sleep times can impact people's moods. And again, how we differ. And then I'll be really honest, a bit of it was chance. I saw this PhD advertised around sleep, circadian rhythms, light exposure in older people. And I thought, yep, that's what I want to do. So I shifted from animals over to humans, those who can talk back. And I have never looked back. It was absolutely the right thing. I had a wonderful group, wonderful network, and just a topic aligned with my interest. And I just took off from there.
So what did you do? What aspect of sleep did you talk about circadian rhythms, but what did you actually cover in your PhD?
So what we find generally that as we age, sleep becomes more of a problem. Whatever sex, gender you are, it becomes more of a problem, and different reasons. But one is lack of light exposure or lack of light perception. So we need a regular exposure to light and dark. It's often forgotten. We need the light and we also need the dark.
Yeah.
And the more regular there is, the stronger the signal, as in a timing signal to our body clock. Now, the body clock is an area up in your brain. It's about 50,000 cells. And that sets the timing for all the different processes in our body, including when we sleep and when we are awake. Now, our human species, we have evolved to be awake when it's light outside because that's when we can see, right? Whereas big cats, for example, they can still see at night, but we can't. So if we would run around in the middle of the night, or rather our ancestors, if they'd done this, big cats would have come, eaten them up, end of the human species. So we therefore rest when it's dark. Right. Now, as we age, many things change, including our eyes and our lenses, and less light gets through, and particularly less blue light gets through. Now, blue light, I know, has a bad rep, which is a bit unfair, because blue light, out of all the wavelengths, actually is the strongest signal for our clock to know it's daytime. Now, when light is reduced, and in particular blue light is reduced during the daytime, then the clock doesn't quite know, is it daytime, is it nighttime? What should I be telling the body? And sort of the thought is that is one reason why, as we age, we have problems sleeping, more fragmented sleep, and so on and so forth.
So there's quite a strong link then with aging and how our bodies are changing as we get older, all genders, you're saying. So the sleep becoming problematic. So I'm curious whether is sleep problematic because we think we need more sleep or we actually need more sleep?
Lots of reasons. I think often we think we need less than we need. So that's one route to poor sleep. But yeah, there's also the I need more sleep, or I need better sleep, or I need to sleep between 10 and 6. It's this I must, I should, I have to. And often that's because everyone else seems to be like that. So the comparisons, making the wrong assumption, I'm careful here, making the wrong assumption about our sleep needs, how much and when and how it should be. All of that can contribute to poor sleep. Yeah.
So I'm curious, completely off-piste question, but I'm wondering, has your involvement in sleep and your studies in sleep and the work that you're doing, has that impacted how you go about making sure you get the best quality sleep yourself?
Yeah, I think it has. Absolutely. I mean, the way I was brought up, and where I grew up on a farm, there was
Mm.
always an element of slowness. And for me, always a connection to nature as a great resource to slow down, to ground myself. And I've not lost that. So I'm really grateful for that. But absolutely, I have probably become more aware of my sleep and of my sleep needs, not as a way of a pressure, because I don't believe in strict routines. Um, you know, Rituals, routines, call it what you want. Yes, they're great. But as soon as they become strict, as soon as they become rules, there's pressure, and that's never good for sleep.
And people are going to find that absolutely fascinating, aren't they? Because so many different theories and philosophies around sleep exist. And there's so much pressure, I think, on people to believe that they need to sleep when it's dark, or they need to go to sleep at 10 and wake up at 6, or whatever that happens to be. But my understanding is that, first of all, our circadian rhythm is individual to us, as although we're following the natural light, actually, because I'm sharing the house with my son, for example, I have an 18-year-old at the time of recording. So his natural cycle and my natural cycle, we know is very different. And we know that we want to go to sleep. We get the sleep signals in the evening at different times, and we wake up naturally feeling energetic at different times if we allow ourselves to fall asleep and wake up naturally. But then he has to force himself into a routine for school. I have a routine for work, but then I've adapted my work so I don't have to start till later in the day, and I work later in the evening. But he doesn't have that choice, right? School starts early, which for teenagers I feel is not the greatest fit, but that's possibly a conversation for a whole other time. What would you say to people that are in a household? Many menopausal people are going to be in a household where they've got people who have got completely different rhythms. What's the best kind of approach for a house to have some level of flow in the household when it comes to their sleep? I'm not asking that question very well. Hopefully you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I think communication.
Mhm.
Communication really is key. And first of all, for each single one, is to understand what are my sleep needs. So it sounds like you two very much know what your sleep times are. What your sleep duration is, whether or not you always get it. Like you said, society is unfortunately not always helpful there. But first of all, I need to know myself, and then I need to communicate that to the others, right? And I think letting them know what you need, and equally let the other ones, giving them a chance to say what they need. And it won't always be a perfect solution, but perhaps there's a compromise that's to be done. I think the most important thing is that everyone realizes how important sleep is. And I'm thinking here about children, teenagers. It's not about pressurizing them into, oh, you must sleep, and so on and so forth. Because if you don't, then you'll fail, whatever exam, and then this and this and this can happen. This is the parent's anxiety, not the child's anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's that's why I think, again, communication really is the key, and everyone agreeing, well, sleep matters here. And
Yeah.
for me, sleep's important for performance, but I think it's much more important for interaction, for how we are and how we are with other people. And at the end of the day, we are social creatures. We want to connect. We need to connect. And I think that is really where sleep is so important. And it's about realizing, acknowledging that, and then working out, okay, so how can we support one another, that we can get the best sleep possible.
Yeah, and I think, just listening to you thinking about that, thinking about sleep is impacted by our age, it's impacted by our schedules, it's impacted by, lots of social interactions. And I think what you're saying is that the better sleep we have, the better our communication is. So I can see how that could become a downward spiral. Someone's not sleeping well, their ability to communicate is lessened, everyone's stress levels are going to go up, and then it becomes a bit of a ever decreasing cycle. So when you're working with people, do you work predominantly with adults? So that was my first question.
Yeah, predominantly
Yeah,
with adults, sometimes adolescents, because just
yeah,
what you described about your son, I'm assuming his body clock is a bit later. than yours, and that fits in with his age, and it should sort of very gently move forward, whatever forward means then for him when
Yeah.
he's sort of in his 20s. So yeah, for me, it's mainly adults, and also mainly with women.
And what are the common things that trigger someone to reach out to you to look for help and support?
It's the impact lack of sleep has on how the person is feeling, performing, and very often the interaction with others. This sort of sense of I'm not showing up in the way I want to show up. I'm letting others down. I let myself down. I'm letting others down. That's one of the biggest things.
So someone reaches out to you, they've identified there's an issue, and they reach out. What would they expect to happen once they've contacted you?
So often I have sort of a short call. For some people, we go straight into a session, but certainly in that session, it's about exploring what's going on at night, but then also what's going on in the daytime, because day and night, sleep and wake, they're not isolated. They impact one another. They precede one another, right? It's a cycle. So it's looking at the night, but also looking at the day. Because at night, often when we can't sleep, we worry about the next day, or we worry about the day we just had. So we have to understand that. We have to understand what are the general habits. What is it that you do, don't do? What's the timing of what you do and don't do? So that's and I think really, what's the cost to
Yeah.
you of not sleeping well?
So what sort of things would maybe be, so for example, somebody maybe exercising late at night or having a bath late at night. For some people, I hear that works really well, and for other people, they report that really disturbs their sleep. So is it really that individual, or are there kind of general rules about how to use the light and dark wow to set themselves up for a good night's sleep and a positive day?
So I think when it comes to light exposure, I think I would say on the whole, we're all the same, right? That light is alerting for us, and dim light, or darkness does the opposite. When it comes to exercise, the picture isn't clear. I would say perhaps that exercising in the morning is generally better than in the evening, for various reasons. One is coming back to the light exposure. It's the morning light that's the most important signal for the body clock. Right? That's like rewinding your clock, the old school clocks that we used to have. That morning light does exactly that. If you time that with exercise, or even if over time it only became exercise, that can sort of also be another time cue, right? So again, okay, and now day is starting, and now day is starting. Then, of course, how exercise impacts the body. I'm thinking here about cortisol, sympathetic nervous system activation. You don't really want that in the evening. So if you exercise late, there's always give yourself some time for that to come down naturally. So it depends then, if you are someone who exercises in the evening, what type of exercise, high intensity, or is it more yoga, stretching, something really gentle like that? Again, it's very different. So to come back to your question, there are some similarities, because we are in that sense all human. We share a biology, but I'm careful with giving these standard sort of advice. Or if I give that, then it's always, but see how it works out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because you mentioned cortisol, and cortisol for me is a really critical component of everything that we do during the day. And I think that one of the things I remember asking someone I work with in the nutrition space was, what's a good way for our cortisol levels to be working? Should they be high at night and high at night, low in the morning, high at night? What is a good predictor for a really strong performance during the day and really good rest at night? And one of the things that she said was, and I don't know, the validity of this because I don't have the papers to back it up. But she said that often overnight, someone will wake up 2 or 3 hours, maybe 4 hours into their sleep because their cortisol levels have dipped down. And actually they would be better off by eating something that was, just a small snack, maybe 20 minutes before they went to bed, that was a combination of fat and carbohydrate, just to keep the cortisol levels lower as they were going through their sleep cycles at night. And I wondered if you'd ever come across anything like that before.
I have heard, but similarly to you, I haven't seen the papers. I wouldn't say it's for everyone. So again, I would go be very careful there. And I'm thinking very much, for me, evolution, how humans have evolved is a big part of my thinking. And would our ancestors sleeping in a cave, would they have had a little snack just before they went to bed? They could not have. I mean, it would be much, much darker than what we have, and so on and so forth. Food access. I'm careful. However, for some people, it may be what they need, and so again, I'm thinking about, let's explore. But it is really an exploration. It's an experiment, and that's the scientist in me. It's an experiment. Let's not expect and wait for a certain outcome. Let's be open, which is often very hard. But when we are open, we are curious. There's no tension. There's no pressure. In a way, we are sort of calmer. That's always beneficial for sleep.
Yeah, so that brings us into the kind of sympathetic, parasympathetic state then as well, isn't it? So I think what you're saying is that if we can induce that parasympathetic state towards the end of the day, and if we can access that more readily and consciously throughout the day, we're able to do those kind of experiments. We're able to kind of make more rational and better decisions. And then again, there's so many things going around in my head that I'd love to ask you. So my background is in psychology and in clinical, and sleep was a big part of what I had studied way back in the day. And the theories have definitely moved on since then. So it's a topic that, I'm continually learning about and fascinated by, because it's so central to who we are and how we perform. But when we think about someone going through menopause, and we know that estrogen has a role in our blood sugar management, and therefore our cortisol levels are impacted. It's got an impact on our digestive system. It's got an impact on our brain chemistry, our heart health, our bone health. It has an impact on our oxytocin, and so many different things that are being impacted as we're going through menopause. How do you, as a sleep expert, take someone who's going through all those massive changes? And we've talked about, just looking at the different options, but is there something different that you would do or support someone with who's going through menopause over and above someone who's not?
It's a good question. I mean, I think the principles for me always apply, and that's about gaining an understanding of what's going on and a good enough working theory of what might be the underlying sort of triggers or contributors to poor sleep. So education for me is important, and I can see often how in clients they go like, okay, so that could be why. Oh, so I'm not crazy, abnormal, ill, whatever term. Okay, so this happens to others as well. And that brings a bit of relief. I'm not saying that solves the problem, but it brings a bit of relief. And then thinking in terms of self-compassion, there's sort of, okay, so I'm not abnormal, meaning, hey, I'm actually part of humanity, of humankind, right? Particularly women, women of a certain age going through the menopause. So we've got one block covered. There's sort of, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm connected to others, even if I, lie alone in my bed every night. But I know there are many, many others, which is great when it comes to anxiety and worry about sort of safety to help with that feeling safer. So I think that's a big one. Then you mentioned that word changes, right? So much changes. So again, I think that's an important one to talk about and to explore the changes and my role within all of these changes. And sort of cut a long story short, my point here is identifying what can I control and what can't I control.
Yeah.
And then this bit about what can't I control. Okay, how can I sit with that more comfortably? Because that's often anxiety and stress inducing. This, oh my God, I can't control it. I need to, but I need to, right? Because we're all doers and, taking control, not saying we're control freaks, but wanting to be in control. So how can I sit with that?
Yeah.
Because again, that's a source of anxiety, right? Sympathetic nervous system activation. So it's looking at that. Then one part will be, looking, okay, what other specialists might be able to help you as well. And because for me, sleep isn't isolated. Sleep's connected to our waking life, right? Sleep impacts so many areas, and so many areas impact sleep. So therefore, for me, I love working as part of a holistic team. to look at all the various variables. But it might not be needed for everyone, right? It depends. And then the last part very much is around thoughts and emotions that show up at night, right? And it's about, again, here, how do I handle these? How can I be with them? How can I be with them?
Often people say, they fall asleep okay, but then they wake up 2, 3, 4 hours later and they've got these massively huge thoughts in their head that are so anxiety inducing, and they're kind of almost in a panic state when they wake up. And of course, they're then wide awake. They try and fall asleep, can't fall asleep, and they fall asleep maybe half an hour before they have to get up for work or other responsibilities. And I think that can be really difficult and really challenging. And I don't say I think, I know, I don't know why I'm saying I think, because I lived it for 18 months. I had 18 months where I slept no more than 2.5 hours a night, and literally for that period didn't get any more than that sleep, and was in a almost hyperactive state for the entire time, but didn't realize until I came out the other side, and then realized that I hadn't been sleeping, acknowledged it, found out what had been going on with me. And then literally the day that I found out that I was menopausal and there was nothing else more sinister going on, I slept like a baby. And I thought, wow, what a link. That anxiety, that just awareness, that understanding, exactly what you said. When you realize you are not alone and what you're going through is completely normal. And that sense of belonging, just literally took that away. Now, has my sleep been perfect ever since? No, of course not, because I'm human and there are life stresses going on. But I can safely, I won't say touch wood, but I can safely say I'll get 6 to 8 hours of sleep most nights now, which is more than I've probably had most of my life, which is interesting. So when we're training our menopause coaches, we focus on things like mindset, hydration, nutrition, movement, rest and recuperation, asking for and receiving help and support, and then giving back and volunteering. Because I think what we notice, we don't tackle sleep directly, because I think sleep is so complex, which is why I was so excited to speak to you. But I think all of those things, when people go through marking and mapping out how they can approach those topics themselves individually over a few weeks, ultimately their rest side, I won't say sleep necessarily, but their ability to switch off, relax, unwind, and get a better night's sleep happens. So I think from looking at your website, there's a lot of commonality and overlap there in terms of the things that influence our sleep are definitely things I've seen you talk about as well.
I love what you just said. This, with all the training, the volunteering, the giving back, the pro-social behavior. And again, there's a relationship between sleep and pro-social behavior. The less sleep we have, or poorer the sleep, the less likely we are inclined to help. But equally, in helping, we feel connected, we feel safe. And then particularly for women, social support, be that at work or friends, family, social support is or impacts our sleep quality, right? And vice versa. So I love that. This comes back to me what I said in the beginning: sleep being so important for how we show up, how we interact.
Yeah. So how do you work privately? Do you work in the NHS? How do people contact you? What's the, how accessible are you? That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Because I know there'll be people listening going, someone I can talk to about sleep. But realistically, how do you practice?
Yeah, so it is privately. And the best way is just to drop me an email, go on the website, and then drop me an email, and we can take it from there. Like I said, often I do sort of a 15-minute initial call, just to get to know each other a little bit. And then, we just set up a number of sessions, and I don't have a fixed session number, because again, everyone is different. Everyone has slightly different needs. So, trying to be flexible, because I don't want to create an extra pressure. There are enough shoulds, particularly in a woman's life. This shouldn't be a should. This is I want to. I want to do that for myself. It's completely different motivation. So.
And again, that comes back to the whole anxiety aspect as well, doesn't it? People, having that flexibility to be able to work with you and create what's right for them, I think is so important as well. And I'm going to ask you, and I know this isn't your core piece of work, but for all these people out there who are living with teenagers whose sleep has just suddenly gone out the window, what do you say to them? What's your advice?
I guess one is normalizing it. One is normalizing it because the body clock in the teenage years, it swings backward, right? It sends the sleep signal later. And then because teenagers still need, 9 hours, of course they want to sleep in the morning. The problem is school. That is really what creates the problem. And for us adults, anyone who's late, and maybe you are somewhat late, it's work, right? Having to be in an office for 8 or 9 o'clock. That's why a lot of sort of night owls are often self-employed, because then they can sort of kind of create their own times. But coming back to your question, so one is normalize, hey, this is what's happening. Sure, light exposure as in phone or tablet or something like that does not help. It will make matters worse for sure, but there's biological reason why that is happening.
I'm going to interrupt, sorry. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because we have had so many conversations, like amongst the parents, amongst other people going through menopause who've got teenagers. And there's a massive group of people that are saying screens are bad and they're stopping people from being able to fall asleep. And then there's a whole other school of thought that's saying actually there's no impact whatsoever. And there's been a couple of studies come out in the last year or two that have kind of said, no, it's a misnomer. Actually, this is not a thing. So how do we make sense of this? How do we get our teens to know they are having an effect, and having 3 screens on, surrounding yourselves with screens is giving your brain the wrong messages?
Yeah. Well, it's one is the screens, one is the light, right? Because the light's so close to the eyes, but the other is also the content. What's the content that's being consumed? And, one could be the very cliche looking on social media, comparing ourselves to others, and then we always fall short, and that doesn't make us feel good. However, it can also be something really exciting that you're watching or reading, right? And so you're super excited. You'll also find it hard to fall asleep. So light is one thing. For me, it's the content that's being consumed. That's all food for thought, whether that's front room, backroom thoughts, doesn't matter what we think, will have an impact on the body. So again, it's not saying, oh, this is bad. It's more like, okay, talking about how it can impact sleep. Then I think it's really important talking to teenagers about how sleep, or rather lack of sleep, is impacting them, is impacting what matters to them. That's the key, really, right? Because I think talking about academic performance, not so sure, but other things, how alert they are when they play football, or when they play their favorite instrument, or whatever, when they, create a design, how steady is your hand, how good is your creativity? It's connecting it to that. As in, poor night, or after a poor night compared to after a good night, how do you feel?
Yeah.
That's it. It's finding out what matters, what's their value at that time.
Speaking in their language is so important.
That's what it is. And for others, it might be health related, not scaremongering, but really bringing it back to, this is how lack of sleep is impacting you. This is how is impacting you. I think that's really important.
Now, I am always interested in tech, and I love tech. I think it's got it opens up many doors. It gives us great opportunities. But I also see a lot of the people I work with that they will be really super dependent on their Garmin or their Apple Watch. Other devices are available, clearly, Oura Rings. What do you think about people using tech to track their sleep? Because I'm kind of seeing both good and not so good with it.
Yeah, it depends how we do it. Like with many things, right? It's how we use it. Do we use it obsessively as a control, and again striving for something, an ideal that's coming from somewhere else? Or is it just curiosity? Hey, I want to see how my sleep is over a number of weeks, and how my sleep is impacted by different things that I do, in a good way and in a bad way. And then using that information to my advantage. So as an example, with age, I was never a big drinker. Now it's even less. And I notice how alcohol impacts my sleep. 1 glass is okay, 2, 3, well, not much. So now that I know that, when I drink, I choose. And it's not to say I will never have 3 glasses of wine. It depends on the occasion, because we are social creatures. Again, we like socializing. But do I drink during the week 3 glasses? No way. And it's not even every weekend. So it's finding out with curiosity and then using that to my advantage in a way. But again, without this, I have to or I can't.
Yeah.
If I use tech in that way, then it becomes a problem.
It sounds to me like everything that you've spoken about and everything you've touched on is, obviously research backed, and your qualifications speak for themselves. But in terms of so common sense and so sensible, leading with curiosity, letting go of judgment, not being compounded by outside influences and ideals and norms, which, are exactly what they say, but people forget that they are just numbers and they're not personal to them. And I think that's one of the things, especially when someone's struggling with something so important as sleep and they're going through menopause, that they will be clinging on for something that they can hang their hat on and say, well, this person said X, so I must do that and then everything will be okay. In fact, before I came on to chat with you just now, I was speaking to somebody whose wife is going through a fairly long, torturous menopause experience. And I hadn't been aware of it. They hadn't mentioned it to me before, but they just sent me through a whole bunch of information about this is happening, that's happening, what should she do? And I thought, well, there is no one quick fix. If there was, we'd be able to go and buy it, read it, do it, and we'd all click our fingers and be okay. And I think sleep is really complex as well. It's about it sounds like it's very much like unpicking each of the things, looking at what's within our control the controllables, being curious, experimenting, and figuring out what works best for us as an individual in the circumstances and the environment that we're in. I'm curious, because this is not my area of specialism at all. What have I not asked you that I should have asked you that people always want to hear about or love to know?
I think the standard question is, what's the right sleep time and what's the right sleep duration? In a roundabout way, I've answered that there isn't. But I also said in the beginning that a lot of people perhaps underestimate how much sleep they need, or tell themselves, oh, I don't need that much. But in fact, they actually do. So what I'm getting at here is that a healthy adult needs somewhere between 7 and 9 hours, right? That's kind of where exactly depends. And it will maybe be a bit different on different nights, and seasons may also play a role here, right? And then the other part is the sleep times. And there really are early people, there are late people, and then the rest is somewhere in the middle, with the larks, the owls, and the rest of us hasn't got a name. It's important to find out, what is my sleep window? What are my times? When is my body clock saying, and now it's time for sleep, and now it's time to wake up? Again, the better I know myself, the better I can read my signals. In a way, the more in control I am. Yeah. Now, we touched on this, society is in a way not necessarily ideal, in the sense that it favors the early bird, it favors the larks. I'm an early person, so I have absolutely no problem. But come the evening, that's it. That's me done. But the better I know that, I can see, okay, what's in my control? Where can I make little shifts? It won't always be possible, but sometimes there is a bit of space to maneuver to get better sleep.
I love that. And am I right in remembering that there's a chemical or a hormone that's released that tells us that we're starting to get sleepy, that it's time for us to switch off?
Yeah, so that's melatonin. And so melatonin is sort of the clock will set the trigger, and the clock will know when to set the trigger, actually, when the sun goes down, right? When it starts to get dark. Hence, we always talk about, no devices in the evening, la, 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 la. Again, I'm careful with that rule. But anyway, so that's being released as it gets dark outside over the course of the night, and then it stops again, right? And melatonin, and that's really important, it's a signal. It's a way of the body clock letting the rest of the body know, hey, get ready, nighttime is coming, nighttime is here. It's not the same as a sleeping pill. It has some sleep-inducing effects, and it's quite helpful when it comes to jet lag, but it's not the same as a sleeping pill.
So I'm really curious then. So I travel back and forth to the States quite a lot, and I'm okay when I'm doing East Coast. I'm not so okay when I'm doing West Coast unless I sleep on the whole way back. So I'm very, very careful about what times I book my flights, when I'm speaking, how much before I arrive over there, before I speak. And I haven't ever been tempted to, because I manage it by thinking and planning my schedule really, really carefully. But what I notice is melatonin is something you can just buy on the counter. You can buy it at the airport in the States, and yet in the UK, you have to have it on prescription. Is there any reason behind that you're aware of?
Well, the thing is that in the US and in other countries, melatonin is not regulated. It's not a regulated product. That's why you can buy it over the counter. But what that also means is you actually don't know what's in it. Right? Is that really the dosage that they've written on there, and so on and so forth? So for me, it's a huge gray zone. So I'm a bit more cautious there, but that's probably the scientist within me. I'm not necessarily saying don't take it. That's always your choice, but just bearing in mind we don't know how much is really in there.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, you can only get melatonin. Medically graded melatonin, yes, through the GP, typically if you suffer from insomnia and you are over 50 or over 55.
That's fascinating.
Also some children can get it, some adolescents. It's sort of, that's another group who can get this.
Yeah, because I know that typically doctors in the UK, certainly they'll talk about how our brains are still evolving. The brain chemistry isn't really settled until we're in our mid-20s, for example. So the fact you've just said about 55, mid-50s is also interesting. I'm off now to do lots of studies and read more about this, because I'm always fascinated by how our brains work, and I guess that's the psychologist in me. So I could just talk to you for ages, but I'm conscious we've been chatting for a while, and I'm conscious of your time. I'm really grateful to you for making time to have a opportunity to chat. I'm super excited about everyone listening to this. I know this is going to be one of the most eagerly awaited sessions, because people are desperate for information about sleep. Is there anything else I haven't asked that you would like to share before we wind up today?
Is there anything else? Well, the first thing that came to mind is don't worry about sleep. And that's easier said than done, because sleep is important. But the more pressure we put ourselves under to sleep, or the more we try and pull, the more we do to bring sleep to us, actually the further it goes away. Because fundamentally, we cannot control sleep. Sleep is a natural biological process that's best left alone. We cannot control our sleep. However, what we do during the day, what we don't do during the day, the timing, all of that matters. All of that can support our sleep. Right? So it does matter what we do and don't do and when we do it. However, we cannot control our sleep.
I love that.
And allowing that, opening up to that bit of, I cannot control my sleep, right? It's the hardest bit, but that's actually really at the heart of it all. Because if I can let go of that need to control, I can breathe out and I can relax.
Beautiful.
And then rest and sleep can settle in.
I think that's such a beautiful way to wrap this up today. Thank you so much for your time. I will be sharing all your information in the show notes below this, and I wish you a fantastic night's rest when you get there.
Thank you very much. You too.
Welcome to Women of a Certain Stage, the podcast redefining how we think about menopause. I'm your host, Lauren Chiren, a passionate advocate for breaking the stigma and empowering individuals to navigate this transformational stage of life with confidence and clarity. Here, we're diving into a new era of menopause support, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and actionable insights. Whether you're curious about building your personal menopause plan or you're looking to make an impact, you're in the right place. Let's embrace the change together.